Although Camilla has been part of the royal family for many years, she isn't seen as a step-grandmother to Prince William and Kate Middleton's 3 children. In her book, Camilla, From Outcast to Queen Consort, author Angela Levin sheds light on this dynamic. What was meant to be a joyful event, a traditional royal honor passed down to a new generation, ended up triggering something far more complex. Behind Buckingham Palace's polished image, the announcement sparked deep emotional turmoil, revealing long-hidden fractures within the royal family. Prince George, the oldest child of Prince William and Princess Kate and future heir to the throne, had recently been awarded a historic ceremonial title typically reserved for future monarchs. It was seen by many as a symbol of his growing maturity and readiness to one day lead. The public embraced it, and the media called it inevitable. But for one person within the palace, it felt like a personal betrayal. Queen Camilla, wife of King Charles and grandmother to Freddie Parker Bowles and her other grandchildren from her first marriage, was said to be in tears upon hearing the news. According to palace sources, she wasn't upset because George didn't deserve the honor, but because it confirmed her deepest fear, that her side of the family would never be truly accepted as part of the royal core. Camilla's concern wasn't merely about titles. It was about recognition, legacy, and the quiet realization that her bloodline would always be seen as separate, outsiders to the crown's inner circle. What made the situation more painful, insiders say, was how she found out, through the same official palace statement released to the public. There was no private conversation, no advance notice, no opportunity to prepare her family for the disappointment. Just an impersonal announcement on official letterhead. To the outside world, the gesture looked harmless, a sweet title for a beloved young prince. But behind closed doors, it deepened the divide between the Windsor family and the Parker Bowles branch, an unspoken separation that many had long suspected, but few had dared to acknowledge. This wasn't just about protocol. It sent a very clear message. Camilla's family would never truly belong at the heart of the monarchy. In the days that followed, whispers floated through palace corridors. Staff described Camilla as visibly shaken. Some said she confronted Charles. Others claimed she skipped a planned appearance. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, tension reportedly grew between William and his father, leaving Camilla feeling more alone than ever. This is the story behind the title, and more than that, it's the ongoing tale of a family once again divided by bloodlines, ambition, and the painful realities of monarchy. Camilla Rosemary Shand, now Queen Camilla, has spent decades walking the fine line between acceptance and exclusion. From mistress to wife, scandal to legitimacy, her journey into the royal inner circle has been anything but simple. But before we continue, we'd love for you to hit the subscribe button if you're enjoying this video. If you just did, we truly appreciate it. Now, let's get back to the main content. Although her place beside King Charles is now firmly established, sources close to her say her ambitions haven't ended with a crown. Behind the scenes, Camilla has reportedly been working for years towards something deeply personal, integrating her own family, her children and grandchildren, into the royal structure. Her 2 children from her previous marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles, Tom and Laura, have kept a low profile. Unlike Prince William and Prince Harry, they were never given titles, and their children are considered private citizens by the royal institution. But to Camilla, they are more than that. They represent her legacy. And in recent years, she's quietly tried to shift how they're perceived within royal circles. Those familiar with the situation say it started with subtle gestures, carefully arranged appearances at royal events, thoughtfully composed family portraits. Her grandson, Freddie Parker Bowles, polite, well-liked, and often present at gatherings near Windsor, began to appear more frequently, often seated close to prominent royals. People close to Camilla believed she was gently positioning him as the public face of her side of the family. "She was smart about it," said one former courtier. "She never openly pushed for status. She just presented her family as worthy of being taken seriously. There was always an undertone. They could contribute to the monarchy, too. At private dinners and charity functions, Camilla was known to speak proudly about Freddie's achievements. She made sure photos of her grandchildren were included in official palace newsletters and holiday cards. And as Charles took the throne, she reportedly began to suggest, quietly but consistently, that her family should have a more defined role in the new royal era. According to one retired palace aide, there were even confidential discussions about the possibility of Freddie receiving a minor hereditary title in the future. Nothing grand, but enough to formally tie her lineage to the crown. Something ceremonial, symbolic. Perhaps a small barony, nothing that would stir public outrage, but just enough to justify including the Parker Bowles family in the royal directory. It wasn't about greed, an advisor said. It was about belonging. Camilla had always understood that she would be seen as the outsider queen. Elevating her grandchildren was her way of quietly saying, "We're part of this too." But her quiet pursuit of recognition was met with equally quiet resistance. Senior advisors close to Prince William were reportedly wary. To them, the monarchy was a blood-based institution, built on lineage, tradition, and the legitimacy of descent. While Camilla had earned her place as queen consort, her children, and their children, were not royal by definition. There was concern that blurring those lines would weaken the monarchy's foundations. The unease lingered behind closed doors. Camilla remained gracious but persistent. As her influence grew, she used it to push for small changes. More family visibility at events, better seating arrangements, small signs of inclusion. Charles, often caught between personal loyalty and public duty, granted her some of these wishes. But Charles was no longer shaping the monarchy's future image. That role had passed to William, and according to those familiar with his thinking, William had no intention of expanding the royal circle to include step-relatives, no matter how close they were to his father or stepmother. "He has a clear vision," said one insider. "A leaner monarchy, tightly defined, no room for confusion, no space for favoritism. And that didn't include Camilla's grandchildren." The rejection was subtle but unmistakable. It clashed with Camilla's long, patient efforts. She had hoped that over time, with enough care and presence, her family would earn a place. But when the title she had quietly hoped would go to Freddie was instead given to Prince George, without so much as a conversation or a warning, it wasn't just a disappointment. It was a firm no. For Camilla, who had spent years fighting her way from scandal to acceptance, it was a painful reminder that in the eyes of the monarchy, she and her grandchildren would always be visitors. Accepted, but never fully included. William and Kate have long been seen as the future of the monarchy, a modern, relatable couple balancing tradition with approachability. But those close to them say their strategy is more deliberate than many realize. From the moment they stepped into their senior roles, the Prince and Princess of Wales have followed one guiding principle. Their goal was to protect the core of the royal bloodline, not out of arrogance or elitism, but out of a clear intent to preserve the monarchy from confusion, misinterpretation, and controversy. They were focused. As one insider put it, William and Kate understood that the monarchy could only endure if it remained perceived as sacred, orderly, and direct. Blood mattered. Heritage mattered. Titles had to reflect that. This is where the quiet divide with Queen Camilla slowly began to grow. While Camilla had embraced a more blended vision of the monarchy, one that included her grandchildren from the Parker Bowles family, her children from a previous marriage, and a gradual merging of family lines, William and Kate stayed firmly rooted in tradition. Their stance was simple, though some considered it unfeeling. Royal titles should be reserved for those with direct Windsor lineage. It wasn't personal. It was structural. William, as the future king, has made it a priority to slim down the monarchy. That means reducing costs, limiting public criticism, and avoiding unnecessary extravagance. His approach is said to mirror the Scandinavian model: fewer active royals, clearer roles, and no honors given out based on personal relationships or step-family connections. People close to Kensington Palace say that Camilla's increasing suggestions, whether it was minor titles or more visibility for her grandchildren, were quietly pushed aside. There was no confrontation. William didn't need to say no. He simply didn't respond. According to a former aide, the silence said everything. Kate, too, is believed to have been uneasy with the idea of non-royal children receiving formal recognition. Not out of dislike for Camilla's family, but because she understood the optics. In a time when the monarchy faces ongoing scrutiny, any move that could be seen as favoritism or insider privilege could quickly become a public relations disaster. In many ways, the moment Prince George received his long-anticipated ceremonial title marked a turning point, a public signal of the monarchy's chosen path forward. That path is firmly anchored in the Windsor line, the Mountbatten Windsors, not the Parker Bowles family. Staff close to the situation say William knew exactly how Camilla would feel about the decision. Still, William made no attempt to soften the blow. Some say he believed it was better to be honest now than to lead Camilla on with false hope. William isn't unkind, a source shared, but he's not sentimental either, especially when it comes to the crown. He knows exactly what he's protecting. As the public celebrated Prince George's step into a more official role, rumors swirled that Camilla was in tears behind palace walls. For her, it wasn't just about George receiving the title. It was about what it meant that her own grandson didn't, and William had already made his stance clear. Bloodlines shouldn't be diluted. Legacy matters more than emotion. The future of the monarchy would not be shared. In a royal institution built on hierarchy and heritage, King Charles III found himself in an uncomfortable position, caught between the woman he loves and the son who will eventually take his place. While the public has come to see Charles as a calming figure after years of royal upheaval, the decision to give Prince George a prestigious ceremonial title instead of Camilla's grandson revealed a deeper reality. Charles may wear the crown, but William holds the future. Those close to the situation say Camilla had long leaned on Charles to support her quiet efforts to elevate her family. She rarely asked directly or publicly. Instead, she would express her hopes in private. A minor title for Freddie, perhaps. Some form of acknowledgement of her grandchildren's closeness to the royal family. Charles, always the diplomat, would listen, nod, and offer reassurance. "We'll find the right time," he is said to have told her more than once. But when the moment arrived and a ceremonial honor was on the table, Charles faced a difficult choice: honor Camilla's quiet wish and risk alienating William, or back his son and wound his wife. In the end, the king chose the crown, as many believe he always has. Sources say Charles hesitated. He even floated the idea of creating a lower, less visible title for Freddie Parker Bowles as a middle ground. But William didn't see it that way. To him, granting any title to step-grandchildren wasn't a compromise. It was a step too far, a risk to the monarchy's image that could create confusion for generations to come. Charles, who has spent his reign focused on maintaining a stable, modern monarchy, eventually yielded. He didn't want a fight, one palace insider said, but he also understood that William's vision needed to be honored. Pushing back would have started a rift within the family. The decision left a deeper mark than anyone expected. Those close to the king and queen say Camilla took it as a deeply personal betrayal, not from William, but from Charles himself. After standing by his side through decades of scrutiny, relentless media attacks, and rejection from both the public and the royal family, this felt like a knife to the heart, and it came from the man she had sacrificed everything for. She asked him, "Did you even try?" One staff member allegedly overheard. Charles, they say, was regretful, but not apologetic. He believed he had done what was right for the institution, the crown, and the course of history. But the emotional toll was undeniable. In the days following the announcement, Camilla reportedly canceled several engagements. Staff noticed a shift in her mood, withdrawn, distracted, distant. And for once, Charles didn't push her. He knew the weight of the choice he had made. For the first time since their marriage, Camilla no longer felt secure with the man who had once defied an entire world to be with her. Charles has never shied away from difficult decisions, but those close to him believe this one left a deeper mark, not because of political fallout, but because it came at a personal cost. And no royal title can repair the wound of feeling disposable. To Camilla, the crown had symbolized that her past no longer defined her, that she had finally been accepted. But with her grandson passed over and her family quietly excluded, she was left to ask herself a painful question. Did I ever truly belong? The ceremony itself was meant to be understated, a traditional royal occasion marking Prince George's growing role in the monarchy, continuing a long line of ceremonial titles passed down through generations. For the public, it was a feel-good glimpse into the future king's journey. Under pressure, the palace had pulled off a media win. But for Camilla, the moment was crushing. Despite her role at the heart of the royal family, despite decades of loyalty and discretion, she learned about it the same way the rest of the country did, through the official press release. No private word, no advance notice, nothing. One insider claimed that when she saw Prince George's name in the announcement, she froze. Outwardly, it looked like a natural progression in the monarchy. But to Camilla, it confirmed something that had been building for months, that her family would never be truly accepted, that her grandchildren would never have a place in the core of royal life. That night, behind closed doors at Clarence's house, Camilla reportedly lost control of the composed, carefully managed image she had spent years perfecting. She cried, not in public, not in front of cameras or aides, but alone in her private sitting room, with only a few trusted staff members nearby. One witness recalled that she held the printed announcement in her hands and whispered, "They've erased us. After everything, they erased us." Her tears weren't only about sadness. There was outrage, betrayal, and a deep, cutting pain that no title or position could disguise. Camilla had spent decades walking a fine line, earning respect, staying quiet, serving a royal family that had once turned its back on her. She had weathered public hatred, media cruelty, and private humiliation to get where she was. But all of that had only ever been for her, not for her children, not for her grandchildren. And now, a line had been drawn. Prince George stood clearly on one side, heir, favored, celebrated. Freddie Parker Bowles was left on the other, invisible, unacknowledged. Sources close to the situation say it wasn't the title itself that hurt the most. It was what the decision represented. That Camilla's voice, her desires, her hopes for her family, didn't matter. She hadn't even been consulted. One courtier described the mood in the palace that night as heavy and surreal. Everyone felt the shift. You could hear it in the silence, they said. The Queen had been excluded, and she was grieving. Charles reportedly tried to comfort her. He offered gentle justifications, likely prepared in advance, about tradition, public image, and the monarchy's long-term direction. But Camilla, consumed by emotion, is said to have looked at him and replied, "You let them humiliate me." She was scheduled to host a garden party the next morning. It was quietly canceled. The official reason? Health concerns. But those in royal circles knew the truth. The Queen wasn't sick. She was heartbroken. No one would address it publicly, but inside the palace, the effects were visible. Camilla became distant. Charles looked uneasy. And behind the scenes, the Queen's relationship with William and Kate was starting to fracture. To Camilla, this wasn't just a matter of routine or tradition. It was personal. She had climbed every rung of the royal ladder, survived every rumor, every insult. She had worn the crown. But in a quiet moment, she was forced to face a painful truth. The crown could never protect the people she loved, and the monarchy would never truly embrace them. As the emotional storm around her began to settle, palace insiders started asking what this moment really meant. Not just for Camilla, but for the monarchy itself. Because while public attention focused on Prince George's new title and Camilla's private distress, something deeper was unfolding behind palace walls, a generational divide. On one side stood the future, the streamlined, sharpened House of Windsor. William, Kate, and their children were being carefully shaped into a modern, efficient, and relatable royal unit. They represented tradition with clarity and focus. On the other side was the Parker-Bowles family, the so-called blended branch. Loyal, present, visible in photos, but absent in protocol. Not cut out of the monarchy, but quietly ignored. And that quiet exclusion carries the seeds of something larger, something that could grow into a deeper, long-term crisis. "You're witnessing two visions of royalty beginning to pull apart," said one royal historian. Camilla hoped to build a legacy that included her family. William is crafting one that preserves only the bloodline. And both believe they're doing what's right. What does this mean for the monarchy? It may not be undone by scandal or abdication, but by something slower, an emotional unraveling, a quiet fragmentation of what it means to be a royal family. Freddie Parker-Bowles and his relatives aren't children anymore. They're growing up within royal spaces, attending events, walking palace halls, but they remain on the outside. They're not listed in royal registries. They don't carry titles. Even if they spend holidays alongside George, Charlotte, and Louis, the message remains. This world isn't yours. And what does that signal to the next generation? It suggests a monarchy increasingly defined by rigid structure, not just in power, but in belonging. Prince George is already stepping into symbolic roles, honors, ceremonial responsibilities, even early exposure to diplomacy. He's being shaped not just as a royal child, but as a future king. Camilla's grandchildren, by contrast, remain at the edges. No formal recognition, no roles, not even token involvement in public-facing events. They exist within the Queen's private life, but not within the institution's plan. Some say this distinction is essential, that a modern monarchy must be lean, focused, and free from unnecessary complexity if it hopes to survive. But others worry this quiet exclusion, this unspoken sidelining of step-relatives, could sow tension that deepens over time. What happens, one insider asked, when Freddie grows up and sees George receiving yet another honor, knowing he was once considered for the same one? A former royal press aide added, "They won't be children forever. And just because the palace chooses silence doesn't mean those feelings will vanish." For now, William's approach seems to resonate. His children are admired. The image of a strong, unbroken royal bloodline holds sway in the public imagination. But behind that clarity, palace sources warn, there's an emotional cost, one that may not surface for years. Camilla feels it already. For her grandchildren, the impact might take longer to reveal itself. But the line has been drawn, and it cuts deeper than protocol or pageantry. It reaches across generations and into the emotional core of the family. The monarchy's future may be Windsor-centered, but that singular focus comes at a price, a family divided. For Queen Camilla, the crown was never about prestige, it was about redemption. After years of being mocked by the press, whispered about in royal corridors, and vilified as part of one of the most infamous love triangles in royal history, she fought relentlessly for a seat at the table. And in the end, she earned it. She never imagined that the very institution she had fought so hard to join would one day quietly shut the door on her family. Camilla had believed that her sacrifices would mean something, not just for herself, but for her grandchildren. That by carrying the crown with grace and loyalty through years of turbulence and transformation, she might open a path for her lineage to earn at least symbolic recognition within royal circles. Not as equals to the Windsors, she never expected that, but as acknowledged members of a modernized royal family. Instead, she was met with silence. Then, rejection. The ceremonial honor given to Prince George wasn't just a tradition. It was a message, one that affirmed the monarchy's unyielding allegiance to bloodline over bond. And with that, the quiet hope Camilla had nurtured for years behind palace doors was extinguished. Her place is secure now, but solitary. She will stand beside King Charles at public events, pose for portraits, and wave from palace balconies. But she does so with the knowledge that her legacy stops with her, that the Parker Bowles name will not appear in royal archives, that her grandson will never bow in ceremony, be formally introduced, or carry a title, no matter how modest, no matter how willingly she would have shared her own. That kind of pain is deeply personal, and it's one she must carry alone. Because in the monarchy William and Kate are shaping, there is no space for blended heritage or emotional exception. Theirs is a future built on precision, clarity, and lineage, streamlined, focused, and unyielding. Camilla had hoped to leave behind a legacy. Instead, she's left with a difficult truth. She may wear the crown, but her family was never truly part of the royal story.